yourself. Lastly, do well to type your in order in the text space as the debate is going on. You can do that right now. Really appreciate that. So that is to say, who is PM, who is DPM, who is MG, who is whip in that order for all teams in that regard. Assuming we are all set, I would like to invite the Prime Minister to set the pace for today's debate. Hear him.
Okay, am I audible?
Yes, please, you are.
Okay, so prefer POS via chat. If you don't want to be told to shut up like the chair advised us, maybe you shouldn't unmute. Yeah, but that's just a friendly counter. I'm fine if you're on mute, but shouldn't be rampant, Maybe when you're mute, you wait for some 15 seconds or something. But fair, I'll take both opening and closing. Okay, so in 3, 2, 1. The first thing opening government is going to tell you is what traditional wives actually really looks like. They look like the following forms. The first form is they probably look like wives who actually believes in the old traditional view of marriage. One, marriage being one where the woman is supposed to be submissive to the man, and the man supposed to be the one who is the head of the family. That means 3 important things. It means number 1, that within the marriage home, the woman at every point in time is supposed to be more like an advisor, and the man is supposed to be the one who makes the final decisions within the house. But 2, it looks like, for example, the woman choosing to absolutely abandon her career, her economic, whatever other things that do not matter, in exchange to just stay at home, take care of her kids, give her husband some good sex, make sure she's the one who's always at home, while the husband is the one who is always away out there and hustling and bustling and bringing in all the economic well-being of the home and ensuring that everything is fine, paying the bills, the school fees, every single shit that she wants or the kids actually really want or what the home actually really demands. So bills is for the man, the woman is for the home. The third thing is, this may look like women who do not think like modern day women, who think that women must still continue behaving like the medieval times, like the 1800s, like what the Bible tells them, where it says that women are supposed to be much more submissive to their husbands, or like what their traditional system tells them, where they are told that their ancestors, when they used to actually really engage in marriage, this is how women used to behave. They should stick to the gendered roles that were prescribed by those old rascals and irresponsible people, and that's the best way for a woman to behave. That's the way she can be pious, etc., and so on and so forth. But thirdly, traditional wives simply look like wives who think that they are unequal or on at par with man, because they think generally that is the best way to actually have a very successful home, and a better one at that, right? And so on and so forth. So clearly, these are the sort of things that we think probably may look like for traditional wives. The second thing you must note is the feminism or feminism itself. When we say feminism, we are referring to the umbrella blanket movement. We are not referring to substrands. We're referring to the umbrella movement. The umbrella movement its core principle is that all genders must be what? Equal. They must be equal economically, they must be equal socially, they must be equal politically, they must be equal culturally, and they must be equal within the marriage home, and so on and so forth. That means 4 important things. It means 1, for decision making, they must have an equal say in there. But 2, it means for economic say, they must also have an equal say there. But 3, they must all have an equal say in what kind of career they must pursue, how they want their lives to actually look like, and none of them should be able to superintend over the other. Given this clarification, I'm going to take any POCs, any point of clarification from OO or CO before I continue. Okay, good. None. What it simply means is I'm going to prove 2 instances why incompatibility exists. Now, what does incompatibility look like? It looks like, number 1, 2 things that cannot coexist, right? But 2, it looks like 2 things that cannot simultaneously be together. But 3, it looks like 2 things that contradict each other absolutely in all fronts. But even if there's any specific front, one always overshadow the other. There's never a parity between them. That is what we think that is incompatibility. But at best, What opening government is saying, incompatibility simply means that they can't coexist, they can't move together, and they always must contradict. That's the metric in this debate. First analysis from Prime Minister. We think that the most important metric to use in this debate is the umbrella feminism, because if you are going to use all the substrands, even the substrands themselves are incompatible. So that will even disadvantage OO and CO. This is an argumentation that helps them. So if they come and say, oh, conservative women should have their rights, liberal feminists should have their rights, yeah, we agree. But are they compatible? We don't think so. The best chance they can have is to use the core principles. And I think that is a fair metric because that's the umbrella movement. And that is what we have known all this while. And it's fair for both benches, right? But I think it goes more worse for OO and CO. And so that wouldn't even help them. Our first case then is, in terms of principles and ideologies, there is an incompatibility. Feminism requires equality between gender and sex. What does that look like? It looks like four things. It looks like, one, women in marriages not being submissive to men and they being equal, having equal say, women being able to pursue whatever they want to pursue in the family and not doing so for the convenience of the woman and of the man, and so on and so forth. When it comes to traditional wives, it says that there is a gender that is superior. It entrenches the idea that men are supposed to be the guys who superintend over women, which means that that supremacy that exists for traditional wives is something that cannot be compatible with feminism because of three things. Because one, there's no parity in moral agency. There's a diminishing moral agency for women and an increasing moral agency for men. But two, there's no ability of women being able to pursue their moral agency in its pure sense. And I'll give you a classical example. There was an Arizona woman who was an early voter just this week. For 50 good years, she's been married like 30 years of her age. Out of the 50 years of her age, she's now 80. For 50 good years, her husband has always told her he doesn't think that she should vote. And based on that, she never voted. The moment the husband died this year, she decided to vote because he died this year. What that means is three things. Even though those women may coexist, may exist in those equal treatment that OO and CO will say are beneficial, which OG agrees. We don't think that in purest sense, if they had any other choice, they would have taken those choices just like the Arizona woman. But secondly, it means that she has never been able to find herself forming her own moral agency and image more independently. It always depended on her husband. That is what traditional wives actually really look like. But thirdly, it looks like glorifying patriarchal structures within cultures, within religion, and so on and so forth, and helping them perpetrate. They are mostly religious women. They're mostly women who buy into culture and so on and so forth, and don't buy into the money mainstream system. But thirdly, they look like women who actively campaign against that core principle of feminism that says equality, where they tell people how, listen, God took the ribs of Adam to create woman. The scriptures say it. It is there. You are not more powerful than a man. Charlie, you need to give up. This is what they always do. So that incompatibility exists there based on this particular metric. What have I done for you in this debate as Prime Minister? I've been able to give you clarifications, core reasonings, where like the boundaries for this debate to occur. But lastly, I've been able to show to you that they contradict the equality idea. OO must prove why that contradiction is non-existent to beat OG. We are proud to propose.
I begin my speech in I begin my speech in 3, 2, 1. Understand that the whole movement of traditional wives is actually a recent trend that started in 2024. So they are the women that actually opt into it are set in 2024, and they set specific terms. Like, one, they get specific allowances for doing the homework, like home duties. But then two, they have opt-out mechanisms there that means that there are a lot of divorce laws that support these women's breaking out of abusive relationships. But then three, literally, just like how men make women sign prenups, and women who want to be traditional wives also sign those type of arrangements, right? So it's basically a new wave that has come in. OG cannot come and say that the whole idea of traditional wives is based on biblical ideologies, because understand that not all traditional wives are Christians. Their whole idea that is basically fitting the whole idea of traditional wives into religious sectors, and specifically Christian sector, is completely disingenuous, because Muslim women are not expected to do all the things that Christian women are expected to do, right? So that means that their whole characterization of traditional women themselves is very disingenuous, right? Because understand what exactly a traditional woman looks like, right? We think that there are different ideas according to different cultures and religions, and there are different nuances that exist within the whole idea of traditional wives. But to have a fair debate, we have to consider the most basic form of being a traditional wife, which is abiding by the traditional basic gender roles. So this looks like cleaning, cooking, and essentially being a homemaker. That does not necessarily mean that you go ahead and accept the abuse that is being perpetuated by your husband, and that does not also mean that you go ahead and do not report all the bad things that happen, because as I said, the whole idea of tradwise is a new trend that has come on, where social media influencers actually show how good their life is as a stay-at-home mom or a stay-at-home housewife, right? So that means that once again, all the characterization that government bench gives is largely skewed and is very like archaic, right? But why does it go in line with feminism? Because understand that feminism also has different forms and ways in which it's interpreted. So black feminism might want something else, religious feminists might want something else, completely something else, right? But at the end of the day, all they want to achieve is these three basic things. One, they want a choice to choose for themselves. Two, they want equal respect and relevance in the society as other genders. And three, they want basic human rights. We think traditional wives do not defy any of these three core principles that all feminists abide by. Because one, it's their choice not to become part of the rat race that exists in status quo. But then two, is they're also able to get equal respect for the work and effort that they put in homemaking and giving birth and raising children as integral parts of society. Therefore, they get the equal amount of respect and relevance that is they get the equal amount of respect and relevance that is given to them in the society for the role that they choose for themselves, right? The third reason is that the idea that they accept abuse is largely flawed for two reasons. One, because traditional values themselves emphasize mutual respect in and of itself. That is why when somebody abuses a woman, most likely they hide it. They don't do it openly, like, oh, I'm abusing my wife and I'm a great person, right? They hide it. That means traditional values themselves expect mutual respect in the traditional roles. But then two, anytime these traditional wives get a chance to report abuse, they do so, and every time they have those chances available, they do so, because nobody in their right mind wants to accept abuse in the first place, right? Let's deal with their whole idea of the whole idea of subordination, right? We think that they cannot the whole idea of being subordinate to their husbands cannot be the reason for op to say that traditional wives are not compatible with feminism. Why am I saying so? Because even in the corporate world, in most instances, women were subordinate to men initially. However, now they're actively working towards getting posts into managerial positions. So when they initially, when women went into workforce, they were subordinate to men, right? So it's a gradual process. If op believes that there is a problem, it can simply be solved the same way it's being solved in the corporate world, because traditional wives are not subordinate in all instances. Where they are subordinate, like they say Christian world and all of that, we think it can just be bettered like the way it's being bettered in the corporate world. So even if you go and work in a company specifically, you are still going to be in places where there is less feminism and people are not progressive, women are still subordinate to men in those instances, right? So the whole problem is not where you work. The whole problem is not which job you choose. It's about the area within you work and people around you and how they treat you, right? So the government benches assumption that if you're working in the corporate world, you won't have to listen to men, and you can do whatever literally you want, is largely a fallacy. Now let's look at understand that the whole idea of feminism, this is the second analysis. The whole idea of feminism is to bring women to a level that makes them a relevant member of the society so they can sustain themselves. A housewife actually contributes a lot to the society, which in recent years was just undermined by patriarchal structures that only glorified manly abilities, degrading the housework like cooking, cleaning, and childbearing to a menial level. The truth, however, is that the work that these traditional wives do is worth a lot, because understand, cooking requires a chef, childbearing requires surrogate mothers, cleaning requires housekeepers, and child raising requires a nanny. All of these things are costly, which traditional wives do with their husbands, while their husbands earn through the 9 to 5 job that are specifically designed for men and provide shelter, right? We think that just by performing all of these duties, housewives inherently contribute to the economy by doing jobs that they would otherwise have to pay for, right? This means that the labor that they provide is still the same labor that another woman who has a fancy title gives out to the society. How is a woman working for another house as a nanny empowered and compatible with feminism, but doing the same thing for your own house is incompatible? We do not understand that. In status quo, most women are forced to be part of the rat race because the idea of being a traditional wife is archaic. This gives them limited chance to pursue what exactly they are capable of. We think that traditional wives even glorify the roles of women more and empower them with whatever choice that they make by striving to do what they are capable of doing best. And this fulfills the feminist ideologies of being assertive and making the choice that best fits you, right? We think that existence of traditional wives actually creates a bigger pool for women to be able to exercise their right successfully, and that is why it is actually compatible with the whole idea of feminism, and it promotes it to the maximum, right? Where if Ockbent has to prove still wants to prove that it's not compatible, they have to prove why all of these things, the three things I told you about feminism, are still not compatible with the whole idea of traditional wives. Proud to oppose.
Thank you very much for a wonderful speech, leader of opposition. We'll now invite the Deputy Prime Minister to summarize the case for OG. Here.
Hello, can I be
Hi.
heard?
Yes, please, you can.
Okay. All right. Good evening, everyone. This is Grace. I'm the DPM. So just
DPM,
okay. So
you're
I will just request for my people. Am I audible now? Sorry, I was muted.
yeah, but can you just read a motion?
Can I be
Let me be
heard?
clear. Yeah, can you read a motion for me to be clear? You are audible enough.
This house believes that traditional wives is incompatible with feminism.
That's great.
Okay. So Chair, could you please mute?
Sure.
Okay, so I don't take verbal POIs. Please don't unmute to ask POIs. I don't have the best network, so I will ask for POIs. I will try and ask for POIs, but then the text space is available. The one inside the call is available. Or if you want to use the one outside, just tag me so it can pull up on my screen that you want to ask a POI. You could just say POI from your team, and then you could tag my name. So I'll be starting my speech in 3, 2, 1. Panel. The reason why opening opposition cannot rank over OG in this debate is very simple. The first thing is that they argue this debate alongside strawmanning our characterization by making it look like we're trying to abolish traditional wives and we don't actually like them existing in the society. This is false. The debate is for opening government to prove that feminism and traditional wives' values are incompatible on a principle level, because this is a belief motion and we're supposed to be engaging the debate on principle levels, right? The second thing they tell you is that, first of all, they believe that this trend is something that is new to the society and something that TikTokers and Instagram users created. That is a lie. Firstly, don't just manifest from the sky or fall from the ceiling, and inherently everything new in our society generated from somewhere. The concept of traditional wives posting themselves on social media and making other people to buy into that ideology is something they mimicked from the traditional setup of marriage that has existed for almost 100 decades now. We think that this is in line with what Prime Minister tells you, because he already characterizes to you what traditional wives look like in society today, that they are individuals that necessarily buy into the principal ideologies of what a core conservative marriage looks like. It's not inconsistent with the same thing that they say. So I don't actually understand why they want to discredit that definition, which is not inherently far from the truth of what it looks like, right? The second thing that they tell you is that primarily they feel like, oh, these wives of themselves are taken care of by their husbands and etc. And when they are abused, they feel like there are channels for them to report. Nobody said that this wasn't true, right? And nobody is arguing or disputing that this is possible. We think that that is a fundamental right that women have in the society, that feminists have fought for a long while, that abusers of their wives and abusers of their children get to be locked behind bars, right? We are not actually disputing that these women have the right to do so or can choose to do so. We think that also they misconstrue the concept of submissiveness, because we tell you that in most instances, the conceptual understanding of these women of what marriage looks like is influenced by a wide variety of things. It could be their traditional system, it could be religion, or it could be the culture where they come from. Different varieties of women exist in the society that come from Muslim religion, Christian religion, traditional African setup, and even ancient European African setups, right? Sorry, for marriages, right? So these are things that could like influence traditional wives and how they understand marriages on reason. So that is not something that we think that they could say that, oh, we only restricted it to Christianity. This is not the framing you get from Prime Minister. He explains to you how these people exist in a larger scale. They tell you that also that the reason why they feel like compatibility exists between traditional wives and feminism is because of the basic idea that traditional wives want to have a choice, they want to have equal respect, and they want to actually enjoy human rights. Panel, the only reason why traditional wives in 2024 can claim any of these things is because of the steps that feminism have actually done to move away from traditional narratives and fight for the rights of those women. Those men could not have achieved that if they actually restricted themselves to the core foundation of what traditionalism actually restricted them to. Panel, further analysis to engage to this is that you need to understand that patriarchy of itself that these women fought against is tied to basically marriage, right? Marriage being one of the things that the society uses to restrict women, which is why if you get pregnant, they force you to get married to the person that you got pregnant for, or even if you want to get, like, at a younger age, your mother starts to indoctrinate you how you're supposed to act towards a man. These are basic things that existed in the society that feminism had to break away from. If both concepts were compatible, ab initio in the beginning, there wouldn't have been a need for that breakaway, which is basically what opening government has been preaching for. Panel, what do you get from us? We tell you traditionally how these women exist and how feminism exists in of itself. And we give you from Prime Minister's speech two core reasons why incompatibility exists within the society. He engages it on a principal level, the principal foundation of equality, inclusion, and a strive for freedom that exists on feminism, and the principle of the idea of submissiveness, and the principle of domestication of women, and the principle of coexistence among men who exist in higher echelon that actually exists within the traditional wife sector, and how they want to be treated by their men. We engage this on a lot of analysis to show you why there's clearly incompatibility that exists within this principle. The next thing he analyzes to you, which I'm going to expand on in my speech, is the idea of lack of coexistence. We think in our world that the reason why we advocate or believe that incompatibility exists is because we want these principles to exist on their own. Traditional wives can stay on their own, exist and be happy with their husbands without with feminism, because it causes a lot of issues, right? The first issue is confusion among these two blocks, because first of all, liberalism is what overshadows feminist movement in large majority of the societies, which is inconsistent with what traditional women want, right? Because liberalists will tell you that, oh, first of all, you need to have a right to your body, etc. Even some go to the extreme net of actually promoting for like open marriages or even cheating on your husband if two of you consent to it. Now these are things that traditional married women don't actually like, because inherently it goes against the core principles, right? We think that they can't coexist because there will still be a clash of ideologies. We also think that on a further outroad actually affects their existence, because traditional wives can no longer exist within their homes peacefully, existing the way they want to exist to, if feminists keep telling them how to run their homes and exactly what they should have aspired for. And secondly, feminist movement in of itself cannot be progressive as it wants to be if its ideological cause are confined by things that have to do with ancient patriarchy that they wanted to escape from. What do you get as extension from my speech to add to what my partner already gave you? Panel, the first thing is that these two concepts in of itself, you need to understand the level of contradiction and how disingenuous it is, right? It goes not just to the principles, but to the core foundation. We think that historically, the historical adventures of feminism and how they have gotten to where they are because of radical struggles against structures of patriarchy that existed in different societies. While the historical evolution of traditional systems of wife marriages, etc., is because of how most societies have expanded on their marriage levels and how modernization have influenced marriage and how traditional wives exist in our society. Historically, they are not inherently of itself like together to say that, oh, we can have something that we can use in our matches, we can have something that we can use in our seminars, or we can have something that we can use together and preach for the promotion of women. We don't think that this in of itself promotes the networks that exist within these two blocks, and in of itself is going to actually be problematic, because we think that feminist movement has more buy-in and can overshadow traditional women, and they don't actually get to freely coexist within the society, right? We think they're better off on their own, creating their own echo chambers where they can freely, by choice, do what they want to do with their own life, which feminism will not kick against, because feminism also advocates for the fact that women should have a choice on how they want to live their life. We think that secondly, in terms of the essential needs why we want to actually believe that this compatibility is necessary and why it inherently exists within the society. First level analysis panel. We think that traditional wives, even though we want them to exist in our society, are stagnant. Stagnant in of itself, that their ideologies have not generally evolved. Even those TikTokers that are making those videos and promoting those trends still cook and still do basic things. And say you see trends like, oh, watch me cook for my husband and watch me do those things. Women have evolved from that under the roots of feminism. So the stagnant nature can cause an inconsistent chain that could interact negatively with feminism and also backlashing on those traditional wives being the core reasons why women are now moving backwards in of itself. We think in conclusion that OG takes the debate to most of those clashes that we engage. We're very, very proud.
Thank you very much for your wonderful speech, Deputy Leader of Opposition. I'll invite the Deputy Prime Minister, I'll invite the Deputy Leader of Opposition to summarize the case for the opening half year here.
Hi guys, I'm audible.
Yes, please, you are.
Okay, I'll start in a minute, just hold on. Okay, all right, I'm good to go. I'm going to start in, oh, POI is in the chat, by the way. POI is in the chat. Oh, I'm going to start in 3, 2, 1. So there was a very important piece of clarification and clarity that Alia had to give you, right? Because she had to make it clear that there's a difference between being a wife and then the conversation in today's debate talking about people tagging themselves as trad wives, because it's a phenomenon and it's a wave, right? So basically, if you're a wife and you want to do whatever you want to do, it's your decision. You probably would then put it out there and try to make a movement out of it. Today's debates happen when we have a group of people and women who are wives and are making a wave by saying we are registering our autonomy and demanding respect and recognition for the efforts we put in preserving and raising the family units by being at home and working our jobs as looking after kids as mothers and embracing motherhood. We should not have our choices invalidated because we as these women are also feminists. The reason why OG's characterization and metrics by saying these things are incompatible with feminism fall flat is for two reasons. Because one, they say that these two things can never coexist. But literally, the reason why we are having today's debate is because these ideas are coexistent and we're having a conversation about them. The same way TikTok, Me Too, the same way Me Too movement took off on social media is the same way that trad wives has also taken off on social media, and people are discussing both of these things on social media at literally the same time. It means they can coexist, right? But the second reason that OG gave for their own metric for saying something is not compatible is that, if they coexist, one would overshadow the other and would make the other one irrelevant. That means they're simply not compatible. I think that is too basic, like so basic, because the fact that people would have options to buy into whether they believe into trad wives or buy into whether they believe into like normal active feminism and saying break away from the home, become a career woman, climb the ladder of success, doesn't mean that one overshadows the other. It comes down to a matter of preference. It comes down to a matter of what one particular woman wants to choose to believe in. So if you have a bunch of women, probably in the Western world, choosing to believe in we want to climb the ladder of success even more and want to do all of that, it just comes down to a matter of preference, not one overshadowing the other. But there are two extensions that I'm going to drop to show why we're going today's debate from side OO. Because we think that patriarchy and the majority of the world were not happy when women claimed back rights and gender equality and pay gap and all of those things were a thing. So what happened was that they tried to weaponize masculine expectations and put them upon all women, literally. So it is something that oppressive structures and perpetrators do. What they do is that they say, if you think that you are actually worth more as a woman, then you should be able to balance raising 3 kids. You should be able to be a responsible mother, and then you should also be able to rise to the very top and be a CEO running your own business. If you don't do anything like that or something that is remotely as glamorous as that, you are a failure and we regret you. That was literally the narrative being pushed on by the rest of of the world. How do I know this is true? Because of things like literally they say, if you want gender pay gap and you want us to increase maternity leave, that is unfair to the workspace because men are also putting in more. So simply do not give birth or don't have multiple kids so that you can become the boss lady that you want. They were making mockery of women's efforts and literally saying you have to get it all. If you're a woman, you need to get it in the family, get it in the corporate ladder, or you're not making enough strides and feminism has failed. So then trad wives is principally a response mechanism that validates women that make the choice to say that I am going to be fulfilled and get respect as a woman for deciding to prioritize family and take care of these kids. But it gets very crucial because OO would lose today's debate if these women that were choosing to prioritize family were going to be subjugated to abuse and they were going to be subjugated to financial control. But we characterize you and show you why in the context of the debate this is something that is simply not true, because the very same feminism worked so hard to ensure that there are domestic abuse helplines all over the place, there are divorce settling lawyers that are out there provided by states and will provide all of these things for you for free. That means trad wives is simply another wave of feminism that is already building upon the existing tenets of feminism. So if mainstream feminism allows all women a lot of options to opt out of abusive marriages and climbing success ladder and validating your choices, trad wives say, give us that same validation when we decide to prioritize raising kids and not working 9 to 5. And when people when we have an abusive husband trying to abuse us, blah blah blah, we'll still use the same feminism channels to call them out. That literally proves then that they will get back the respect for the amount of work that women put in to make sure that family units are protected and kids are growing at home with a mother figure that is always present and they can literally lean into and develop more emotional stability. I'll take a POI from CG.
Yeah. In what instances does trad wives and feminism disagree?
So here's the narrative. There is a narrative being pushed on mainstream media that says feminism started by backlashing the fact that all women were limited to the kitchen and women didn't have the choice to escape the kitchen. So now that feminism has made it possible for women to escape the kitchen, if you decide to stay in the kitchen, you are putting us back. right? That is a false narrative of incompatibility. Like, that is literally the debate. So what we're saying from OOS, if there is a choice that can now be made, it means it is compatible because the goals of feminism has now been achieved. You get it? So it's meant to be, it's not as a result of a restriction, but as a choice. Moving on then, why is this principally justified, right? Because regardless of whatever extension that closing half brings, Alia has given you pragmatic arguments, literally to the benefits of these women being respected in what they do. But the principal justification, because I've already defeated OG on the metric of incompatibility, right? The principal justification is one that says that women are right to have a reclamation of their agency over what they determine to be what they want to prioritize, right? Because if you allow people to weaponize certain things against you, like to say, if you decide to stay at home and look after kids, then it means you have been subjugated to masculine control. It basically means then that women are simply being subjugated to all of these negative narratives. That reclamation is very, very crucial because all social justice movement we've seen across time weaponized the same tool. Like Black people had to reclaim being called nigger. Women had to reclaim being called bitch. Now they say, if you call me a bad bitch, it's a good thing, right? In the same way, people are simply trying to use the context of choosing to raise kids to be an oppressive instance, and it affects how you are seen and perceived in society. And the trad wives movement are saying, we are all feminists and we are simply fighting for the right to be respected in making this decision. Vote OO.
Thank you very much, DLO, for that wonderful speech. That brings us to the end of the opening half of today's debate. I would like to call on the member of government to start the case for closing government here.
Am I clearly audible?
Yes, please, you are.
In case of a PY, put it in the text space. Don't unmute. Yeah, but I promise I'll take a PY. Promise I'll take a PY. Just a moment. Starting my speech in 3, 2, 1. I think what opening opposition is arguing for is why trad wives are good people, or that idea of being a trad wife is good. The idea, I don't know, women are being paid for doing housework, and I don't know, there's no abuse in their families and so forth. I think what they are arguing for is the benefits of these trad wives. However, that's not the question of the debate. The question of the debate is, even if we agree trad wives are good people, or what they like, the idea of being a trad wife is a good thing, why is it compatible with feminism within this debate? But secondly, I want to point out that having different principles, i.e., me and Perez having different principles, does not necessarily mean we can't coexist or we are incompatible. I think what we are going to argue from CG is that not just that these guys have different principles is why they're incompatible, but just that trad wives are not allowed to be within the feminist movement. They are not allowed to exist there, and hence why they become incompatible to the feminist movement. Yeah, and so forth. OG was right in pointing out that the dominant form of feminism we have in status quo is Western feminism. This is number one because they tend to be the most promoted by social media algorithms such as Facebook or TikTok. Number two, they tend to be the ones with the most resources, so they're able to propagate their ideas more than compared to like trad wives who tend to be more traditional and most probably found within conservative nations, which most of the time tend to be developing nations. And three, they tend to be more in number, which means their narratives are just more out there as compared to other forms of feminism. The thing with this form of Western feminism, number one, is a form of feminism that believes that the emancipation of women is not yet complete, that there is still work to be done to fully achieve the emancipation of women. But number two is that they see then that trad wives are a hindrance to this economic, not economic specifically, but all form of emancipation that is yet to be achieved. Because they view that trad wives, this idea of being housework and so forth, number one, they view them as people who continue to perpetuate the narrative that women, for example, stay in the kitchen, or that housework should not be shared and should primarily belong to the woman. Secondly, they view them as people who can be used by people who are against the feminist movement to propagate harmful narratives. So pundits who hate the feminist movement can use trad wives as examples to perpetuate negative narratives against the feminist movement and stop that full emancipation. But thirdly, is that they see trad wives as people who are content, is that they don't see the need for change. They feel that their lives are good to the extent, to the point to which they have achieved up to this date, and they don't see the need for change, which is different from the Western feminism, who believe there is still a need for change and we have still not yet arrived. What does this then mean for the idea of incompatible? What it means specifically is that this feminism, specifically the Western feminism, don't allow these trad wives to exist within the feminist movement. This looks like in a couple of ways. The first is that they don't allow them to give out their views. What this means is they don't allow them to contribute anything to the feminist movement, whether it is suggestions, whether it is being able to criticize the movement, or whether it is being able to give, like, I don't know, like recommendations on how the feminist movement can further like grow. What this means is they are unable to give out their views, they are unable to impact the feminist movement in any degree or in any way. What this means is you are incompatible in as long as you exist in a world where you are unable to be able to impact any form of change within that space, simply because you are not allowed to, which means then you cannot be able to exist in that arena. But the second thing they do here is, even if you are able to give out your views, even if you're able to give out your suggestions, is that you are shamed for doing this. You are constantly attacked, whether this be on social media or whether this be physically, like if like me, if like I'm the more Western feminism and you are the trad wife and we happen to live in the same vicinity, you are shamed for your choices and you are attacked for these choices. What then this means is you are unable to exist within this space, because constantly you are degraded, but you are degraded within this space, but constantly you are delegitimized within this space. But beyond that, it means you are how do you call it, the idea of vulnerable people, I don't remember the word. But simply, the argument here is to say you are unable to be compatible with a movement that constantly shames you, a movement that constantly delegitimizes your views and your ideals, and a movement that constantly attacks you on a day-to-day basis. I'll take a break from opening opposition before I continue.
Yeah, here's a question, right? First of all, the question is about principles, like prove why they're compatible, not how people are reacting. The debates can be about how people are reacting. But secondly, feminism doesn't want women to be in the feminine structure, and what feminists want for women to be able to maximize their choices. So what women choose to do is what feminism wants. We think trad wives is in line with that. You get?
Yeah. You say that's what feminism wants, but one, I already argued what is the dominant form of feminism that exists and why it doesn't want what you say in opening opposition. Secondly, on the idea of principles, I already proved the idea that the dominant form of feminism feels like they still haven't achieved the total change, and they view trad wives as being a hindrance to that change, because they view them as being comfortable and being relaxed and being okay with the situation as it is now. So on a principle level, they don't agree. But I take it further to the idea of just pragmatically, you cannot exist within a movement that, one, does not allow you, number one, to opt in. Number two, even if you opt in, they do not allow you to give out your views. Number three, even if you're able to give out your views, they constantly shame you, constantly delegitimize your views, and constantly call you out for those views, and brand you as the enemy to feminism and so forth. Because for you to exist within a movement, it means one, you need power in that movement to be able to change it or to be able to affect it. But secondly, you need your views to be legitimized and you need your views to be taken into consideration, not constantly called out and shamed, proud to propose from CG.
Thank you very much for your wonderful speech. Member of government, we now invite a member of opposition to start a case for him.
Am I audible?
You are, please.
Okay, let me just time myself and then I'll start my speech in the next word. Chairperson, in a civil society, as far as like social movements are concerned, we believe that the most important or the most valued principle is social cohesion. And we believe that feminism is not an exception to this, right? Because by definition, feminism is a social, cultural, and political movement that seeks to promote equality, challenge gender-based oppression, and empower individuals of all genders. Any sort of narrative or belief that goes against that particular principle of social cohesion cannot be allowed to exist. And we believe that a society that actually believes that trad wives and feminism is incompatible goes against the very values of like what a social movement aims to do, more specifically in this motion, feminism, right? Because panel, understanding this, despite the perceived contradictions, traditional wifely roles and feminisms are not like mutually exclusive. Rather, they actually intersect and reinforce one another, promoting a more nuanced understanding of women's agency, choice, and empowerment. This is something that uniquely exists on our side, right? So what are the things that I'm going to do throughout this debate? We want to get it very clear that we don't necessarily believe that the burden of proof for government was not like necessarily proving whether like this incompatibility is actually true. We don't feel like that was necessarily enough, right? Beyond that, they should have at least shown us what is the value within that particular belief. What is it that like society gains? What kind of good society gains when they actually buy into that particular belief? So we're going to show you on two levels why in terms of compatibility they are wrong, and secondly why they are harmful and why our counter is actually much proper, right? We think that there are like basic principles of feminism that actually intersect with like trad wives and what they look like, right? In terms of choice, empowerment, self-definition, autonomy, and rejection of societal pressure, right? So firstly, let us look at like the issue of like rejection of societal expectations, right? But we believe that like trad wives, like they challenge like societal expectations in how like things are done in society, right? Currently, we feel like trad wives are like being oppressed, where they are being told that like they are sellouts of the movement of feminism, right? We feel like in itself that is a form of oppression, and feminism over there has always fought against any form of oppression that tries to make women to conform to certain gender roles, right? We feel like trad wives, especially when we concede to our opening like characterization of what a trad wife looks like, we feel like them choosing to be domestic wives or whatever, it is their choice, and this is something that feminism actually fought for, and this is something that is actually happening, and this is something that we are actually joyful for, right? But how does it like coincide with like feminism, right? Feminism as a whole, like it fights for choice and autonomy and all of those. Trad wife chose to be like traditional wife, and that was their choice. This is something that they fought for, right?
Right.
This is to say, it currently exists within a system where that particular thing, it's a choice, and they are not like coerced to actually like be traditional wives, but rather they've chosen to do all of those, right? But secondly, in terms of intersection of like autonomy and personal choice, right? We feel like currently in status quo, both ideologies of traditional wife and feminism, they are all about like fighting for autonomy. That is right. Whether you choose your career, whether you choose your family, at the end of the day, both parties want like that freedom of choice, and it exists on both wings, right? Thirdly, we feel like both traditional wife and feminism actually challenge patriarchal norms, right? They might be challenging them in different ways, but the base root idea is that they both challenge patriarchal norms, right? For instance, like traditional wife, they challenge and critique how like the patriarchal norms have like developed domestic work, right? Currently in society, most people demonize how like women actually choose to be domestic wife, right? They have removed that value that domestic life actually has, right? This is something that exists, and this is only happens when like society continuously believes that in terms of compatibility, traditional wife cannot like exist with like feminists, right? Feminists on the issue of particular norms, feminists will focus more on like oppression of women, like anything that actually oppresses women, right? But the moment it's an issue of choice, then that oppression does not necessarily actually exist on their side, right? But here's the thing that we also tell you that like what it was a burden for like government, right? Government should not just only have tried to show us the incompatibility, which by the way they failed, but secondly, they should have like shown us like the value within that particular belief, right? What are the types of goods that like society actually gains when society actually buys that trad wives are incompatible with like traditional wives, right? We feel like there is no value within that particular belief, because all you do is like you demonize the choices, right? You demonize the very choices that the feminist movements actually advocated for, right? We don't necessarily think that the two things are mutually exclusive. We actually feel like the existence of traditional wives are just simply pragmatic like evidence of showing how far like the feminist movement has come and the kind of things that they have achieved, right? They have achieved a level where in status quo, these women have enough choice where they can actually choose to stay at home and take care of their husbands and children without any form of oppression, right? Where they are not necessarily being coerced and pressured by society to conform to those particular values, right? This is something that feminism has fought for, and this is why the two things can continuously exist, right? What are like the current wave, like in terms of like the current wave of feminism and what it aims to do and how it like it's compatible with traditional wives, right? We feel like the current wave, it tries like to reclaim domestic work, right? To continuously add value within that domestic work and actually show that women are more valuable whether they choose career or whether they be domestic, right? Secondly, in terms of like a feminine agents, right? We feel like embracing traditional rules does not like necessitate surrendering autonomy, right? Women can exercise one agency within relationships, secondly, negotiating boundaries and expectations, right? These are all the things that have been fought by feminism, and these are the things that we are seeing live right now with like a traditional wife in status quo, right? Thirdly, in terms of like how like we define, characterize, and like contextualize choice, right? Feminism, one, it advocates for like a women's right to choose, right? Traditional wifely roles can be like a legitimate choice that is free from patriarchal cohesion, and this is something that like we see currently in society, right? Why is it like our counter narrative is actually more efficient for society, right? The counter is simple, and that is a society that actually buys like the compatibility is there, that trad wives and feminism are actually compatible, right? We feel like reconciling traditional wifely roles with feminists, there has a value. One, we promote inclusive and more nuanced women's experience without any form of oppression or demonization. Secondly, we're in a better position where we can be able to challenge rigid binary oppositions between like traditional wife and progress, right? The negatives are coming from their side where we lose all of these things. Thirdly, on our side, when we buy into the counter narrative, is that we empower women to make choices that align with their own values and aspirations, right? Aspirations that are outside of any form of cohesion, right? A feminism that actually thinks that there is no compatibility, that is an oppressive feminism. It's a feminism that actually goes against its core values. This is why the compatibility exists, and this is why our counterfactual is highly more beneficial to society. Thank you.
What a wonderful speech, member of opposition. I would like to invite the government whip to summarize the case for government. Here.
Ask for a POI, don't unmute yourself. I begin my speech in 3, 2, and 1. The debate is all about feminist movement ideologies of how social liberation needs to be achieved, and that is why it is incompatible with the feminist movement and things like that. This is a truth value debate. So what OO and CO need to argue generally is that despite all these benefits of traditional wives and things like that, based on these ideologies, are they literally compatible or incompatible? Whatever discourse we are getting from both opposition benches are generally that one, you know what, because of the benefits of trad wives and all those things, I think it is actually compatible and things like that. These people are mass masking the true and authentic ideology of the feminist movement, and that is why these people are losing the debate. Because if you sincerely ask yourself, what has OO and CO generally argued to be incompatibility and compatibility? They don't answer that question. So the debate generally is on government benches, but specifically from CG. We tell you that incompatibility means that both of these like two things cannot coexist together, because number one, the kind of ideology of equity and equality, one, but even secondly, what Mwendwa tells you, social and economic liberation of like women is not something that trad wives actually seek to achieve. These trad wives are just generally these people who kind of believe in the idea that they can probably be subordinate, because you know what, them they can only control whatever goes on in the house. They can receive the money at the end of the day because they want to be the homemaker. They can take care of the home and like continue perpetuating those ideologies, or being an enabler of the ideologies of like, you know what, women belong to the kitchen, or like you're just birth givers, because of the basic and mere fact that one, you are okay dwelling in like that particular like situation. For them, they see it as not a problem. But then you see, this is now why it is a problem to the feminist movement, because the feminist movement is advocating for feminism and equality, that a woman is not subordinate to a man. You need to actually like mitigate patriarchal tendencies in status quo. How you like mitigate these things is that you want women to at least get CEO salaries and things like that. You cannot do this at a point in time that women in like trad wives sit in their echo chambers and decide, you know what, it is okay even if I am not getting paid for like the unpaid work that I'm supposed to be paid for. That is feminist economics. If I iron, I am supposed to be paid according to feminism. But for them, you know what, it is okay because that is my obligation. If I am okay with being subordinate, how then do I like kind of enable the agenda of the feminist movement? How then can I go out to the placard and say we want equity and equality? We want women to be paid for ironing clothes. We want them to be paid for rearing children and like probably sewing clothes. You cannot generally do that, because you're going to be like, then why am I going to campaign for my obligation? And that is why Mwendwa really tells you that even if you're in a movement and things like that, why it is incompatible is not only about an ideology. That is why we're a better government bench, but it also encompasses the aspect that you are empowered to actually work on what that principle and that ideology is. The intuition pump is, that is the reason why people like Pan-Africanists or like Africans say we are not going to eat Pan-Africanism at the end of the day. So generally what you need to do is that you need to empower us to act on that Pan-Africanism. It is the same thing, because trad wives are not like really empowering themselves to clamp against those like horns of patriarchy. Then it becomes a problem. But even secondly, panel, if you infringe on the advancement and the mileage of the feminist movement at a point in time that the developing countries have already embraced this, at a point in time that like this milestone has like literally, it's being achieved in the process of like a full revolution, but not yet a full revolution. If you are okay with like women working in the kitchen without pay, how then do you advocate for like gender roles and like gender stereotypes to actually continue being eradicated? Feminist movement has worked so hard to eradicate and sensitize people that it should not exist, but now it is being enabled by traditional wives. So basically CG is saying the mere fact that trad wives are enabling gender roles and stereotypes to continue existing, and they see no problem. They're saying that because it is our choice, there is no problem, and they feel that it is okay. It generally means that they are undoing this like kind of 100% advancement and mileage of like this feminist movement and their ideologies. So then it is becoming impossible. I said I'll ask. So it becomes impossible for you to like kind of like pursue like something like say of like a full revolution. Again, incompatibility should be bidded on the ideology that the two parties have a similar end goal. Number one, if you advocate for equity and equality and somebody tells you it's okay for you to be subordinate because you know what, you are allowing patriarchy to have a soft spot, then I don't think you're having the same end goal, because your soft spot allows for some kind of coercive power or like some kind of agenda setting power to allow the nuances of patriarchy to continue existing. Therefore, you kind of like mitigate the social and economic liberation liberation that women are supposed to have. In our echo chambers or like things like that, we tend to think that these trad wives now are providing talking points and propaganda and like for these politicians who like do not want to advocate for women's rights and things like that, because they're going to say that, well, you know what, these people are okay with their pre-existing gender inequalities. This generally goes on to answer whatever CO said, that, you know what, it's 6 minutes. Generally, you know what, like these people need to also answer the aspect that it impacts society in a bad way. But again, on a harms benefit analysis comparatively, we tend to think that if you look at patriarchal norms and things like that, because of like the ideologies and things like that, incompatibility one, if you want to reduce patriarchy panel, vote for CG panel, because CO and OO are generally exacerbating the hard power of indoctrination of patriarchy. It is actually not limited on their side. But then again, if you look at house chores being considered a women's enclave and not even a survival duty, that way it cannot even become incompatible. Not that women have choices and like they can control these things, because number one, you need to understand that if you are okay being subordinate, you can't go out to the placards. You cannot be empowered to like work against a system that other people think it is oppressive, and that is why we are saying that we win this debate.
Thank you for your wonderful speech, Gov Whip, and that brings us to the end of the debate for Gov Bench. We would like to invite the Chief Whip to summarize the case for today. Hear him. You are.
Okay, cool. Just give me a second as I tell myself. Hold on. Okay. I'll start by speech in 3, 2, and 1. The whole argument from government side, especially CG of compatibility, is completely false, because like the argument that we have, like our burden that we have to do today as CO is like compatibility with feminism, not just compatibility within the relationship, as in the trad wife and the woman, right? That is to say that if we are to show you how feminism is still compatible with it, with trad wives, we completely take out the whole argument and we win today's debate. But my partner has already told you all these things in 3 levels, which is something that the government whip has completely ignored. Because we think that feminism is fundamentally about enabling choice, agency, and equality, right? So therefore, just based off that statement in and of itself, enabling choice of what? Of the women to become trad wives if they want to. So therefore, in and of itself, just by that virtue, you're still completing the compatibility aspect that they claim for us, that we did not actually like achieve that burden, right? But 3 things rather. We think that feminism embraces choice and agency. We've already showed you how like it's the choice of the woman, they're not coerced into doing any of those things. So that virtue of compatibility with feminism is already achieved on the outside, right? But Nathaniel secondly tells you that feminism recognizes cultural and individual diversity. If the woman wants to opt into if the woman wants to opt into becoming a trad wife, then that's her being diverse from like the normal society, right? And that's what feminism is for. So on that burden, we actually achieve it. And we think that trad wives can also like identify and can also be like feminists as a whole, right? So therefore, just by that virtue, we actually achieve that, right? But a few things before I get to my substantive arguments on what my partner was telling you about, just a few rebuttals. Moving on to the member of government, it tells us like essentially in his whole case, like the argument of incompatibility because of the shaming and called out that you can't exist in that space. We've already proven how the compatibility side with like feminism and trad wives already exists. Let's just deal with that framing as a whole, right? We think that this mostly looks like in their context, like the media shaming of this world, right? So therefore, we think that they can always opt out of that if they want to, right? They're not necessarily forced to be in social media as a whole, right? And even if you can't opt out, let's just just take them at the best case, which only exists in Disneyland. Let's just say they can't opt out, right? We think that if your whole relationship and the functionality of your relationship can be shaken or destroyed by just an online individual who you most likely don't even know in the first place, the relationship just wasn't that solid to begin with, right? So therefore, that incompatibility is not rather because of like the principles of the shaming and the call outness and like social media, but rather how you're not solid within the confinements and the partnership that you have with your like better half, right? So therefore, what does OG tell you? OG tells you like particularly a few things, like patriarchal oppression, that is to say the lack of autonomy, right? We think that feminism policies are not defined by which role one chooses, but rather the freedom to choose it as a whole, right? We think that if a woman chooses the role of like a traditional wife, this expression of agency aligns with feminism core context, right? That's where the compatibility exists, as my partner already tells you, right? So therefore, it's like paternalistic to assume that like traditional roles are like always a sign of oppression as a whole, right? Instead, many women find purpose, fulfillment, and empowerment in those roles as a whole, right? We think that true feminism doesn't dictate how women should like live, and like it only like lets them choose like freely, right? Second thing that they tell us rather is the argument of like inequality within household, right? We think that the unequal distribution of labor is a problem to address within society and relationships, not an inherent like thing to like the traditional wife role, right? We think the traditional values like are for fair and mutual respect, as opening already alluded to, within that home, and like often wills to like considerable influence like within the home as well. This directly deals with the premise of like lack of like voice within the relationship. Like, so therefore we think that this is not, we also think that this is not like a unique relationship, like a unique families, right? It's like a majority burden that they feel to to show us like why this actually like uniquely exists in like trad wife relationships, right? We think that often is like it's often like the wife who is in the workforce that does the laundry and cleaning and all the things that the traditional wives also does. And so therefore, just that the basis of inequality of saying the wife works more than the husband is actually like true on both spectrums, right? So therefore, their failure to like show us how this is like unique to like how this is like unique to trad wives is the reason why that costed them that debate in and of itself, right? But they also tell us that you have lack of coexistence as well, right? Which is something that is like complementary from both benches, right? Both halves rather. This argument is completely irrelevant considering that the debate already like alludes to the fact that there is a coexistence between trad wives and husband, as opening already alluded to. But how we differ from them is that we tell you that it's unfair for them to tell us to argue the truism metric, whilst like the motion already achieves that burden for us. Our burden is to simply show you how trad wives are still compatible within feminism movement as a whole, right? Within that coexisting relationships, and we have already showed you that. Within like the whole government bench, like completely fails to take this debate on the following reasons as well, right? Opposed to I mean, with regard to already what I've already said, the questions that they fail to answer. The first question that they fail to answer is like, does feminism require a lifestyle to be valid, right? This question directly deals with their case, because how can feminism claim to support women's agency and choice if it dismisses traditional roles as invalid or anti-feminism? Second question is like, how can like government stance like claim to support women's autonomy if it undermines the women's chosen roles as well, right? This question shows how government fails to address like the contradiction between advocating for women's choices and simultaneously like invalidating specific choices that don't align with their own views as well, right? But what does Nathan tell you, my partner? It shows that we argue that feminism is about expanding, not limiting the definition of what women can choose to be, right? This embraces like the diverse lifestyle, including trad ones, right? We think that this promotes like acceptance of women's choices, and feminism must be flexible enough to like respect each person's preference and lifestyle, limiting rejecting like the traditional like roles based on fears, like on based on fears of perpetuating norms, like ironically like enforces conforming, which feminism opposes, right? But what are the benefits of all what my partner says? Is because it promotes inclusive knowledge, understanding of women's experiences, and it challenges binary oppositions between like tradition and like progress as a whole, right? And empowers women to make those choices aligning with their values and aspiration. With that said, panel, we're completely taking this whole debate. With that said, we rest our case. Thank you.
Thank you very much for your wonderful speech with of the opposition bearing. That brings us to the end of today's debate. Our you probably can hang around, or you can leave and come back in about 15 minutes time for OE. All the very best. Grace, can you join education room?